Hello again. We are Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16, continuing our previews of all 16 SEC football teams for the coming football season. Today we get to the Texas A&M Aggies. It should be an interesting year in College Station when you're removed from a coaching change.
I feel like this is one of the most interesting teams in the SEC this year. We got so used to seeing A&M under Jimbo Fisher, and it's going to be so different to see someone else on the sideline for A&M this year. And I think Mike Elko was a fantastic hire for A&M. But then you look at the roster, and it's a typical, first year under new coach with a lot of change, and he's having to adjust things kind of as they go as far as the roster. And so this is one of the most intriguing teams to me this year in the SEC. So we'll dive in head first to the Aggies. But first, let's tell you about BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of the over 150 slots games. You can head over to their website today to get in on the action, and you can use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here.
Chase, let's talk about the offense. What do you like? What do you maybe not like or have some questions about?
Well, I mean, we like to start with quarterback, and I'll tell you what, I like Connor Weigman. I feel like, he's just had an up and down career there. Just injuries have plagued him, and I thought he was off to a really good start last year, and he had that injury in game 4, I think it was, and the foot injury, and so. Again, he started great last season, though. So I think he's going to be ready this year. I think he is a good quarterback. I think this year he has a couple of good targets to go to. But I think it's a good place to start for A&M to have a veteran guy. You're not having to break in a new quarterback if you're Mike Elko and his new staff. You've got a guy who's been in the program, who believes in what you want to do, and if you want to pick a quarterback to lead you in this year one, I think Connor Weigman's a good guy to go to. And so I think that's a good place to start. And we'll get to the skill guys in just a minute, but I want to talk offensive line for a second, Chris, and the fact that they got a couple of solid guys on that left side, but my big concern is the right side of the offensive line. They have several guys who are returning from last year, but I think they very well could get beat out by some of these transfers that are coming in. I'm talking Armaj Reed-Adams from Kansas on the right side. I think he could be a positive there on the right side of the line. You've got the guy from,
I know who you're talking
from
about.
Utah,
the guy from Utah,
who is on the depth chart there at center. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. But yeah, I think the right side of the line could be a struggle. And when you aren't as deep in other positions at the skill positions, which they do have some depth, but not quite the depth that you would expect maybe from a team like Texas A&M, and the quality guys, you need to have a good offensive line. And I think this right side really needs to hold up. Tre Zuhn the third on the left side, left guard, Chase Bison. Those two guys, they're solid.
Just had a typo in there.
Yeah, they are. They're solid there on that left side, and so I think they're in good shape. They still need to develop some on that offensive line. That's a concern for me, I think, on this offense before we start talking about the skill guys. That offensive line, I think, may be a concern.
Well, let's here's the way I like to approach offensive line. Kind of the what we know, the what we think, and the what we don't know. And the left side, Tre Zuhn the third, Chase Bisontis have both gotten some preseason All-SEC love. Now, it's not first team All-SEC. This is a pretty good, pretty tough year to be a left tackle in the SEC if you're looking for accolades. But that's a good start. Those guys both started 13 times a year ago. Bisontis actually started 12. And I think when you're moving a tackle inside the guard, a lot of times that either means you're operating from a problem or a position of strength. It feels like it's a position of strength with this team. I think inside's going to be interesting. Mark, I guess as Nabo, has gotten most of the depth charts I look at, he's their first team center. But the kid from Utah last year started 8 times. Utah generally puts out some mashers on the offensive line. So I would think common sense would say either he's your starter or Nabu's pretty good. And then you got the kid from Kansas, Reed Adams, who started 11 times for what was a pretty good line last year. On the right side, you got Ruben Owens, who started 9 times a year ago. I don't look at this group and think it's a bad group. I mean, it's not Georgia, who is, but
Yeah.
I'm probably, I don't know. I'm probably a little bigger on their line than their skill guys, but I'm not going to say that with certainty.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I know that's a focus for Mike Elko, and that has to be heading into this year is getting that offensive line ready. But when it does come to skill guys, Chris, I mean, we'll start with running backs. Rueben Owens back with the Aggies, Amari Daniels back with the Aggies. Both of those guys, had some production. I know Amari Daniels averaged like 5.1 yards per carry last year. He had 6 touchdowns. I feel like these guys need a little more production this year. I mean, they're good, strong runners, but maybe upping that average a little bit. And I know the offensive line can help with that. Providing some holes for them. But I think that's something I'm looking for this year is to kind of up these averages for these running backs where they can really rely on the run game, get that established earlier on in the season.
Hey, Chase, if you're just making a list of guys who produced at skill positions a year ago, whether they were at their current school or other place, A&M would be up there in the league. You've got a lot of guys that filled the stat sheet for somewhere between 300, 600 yards of rushing or receiving or whatever, but nobody that stood out was an all-SEC guy. I guess Rueben Owens and Moose Muhammad have been getting some preseason all-SEC love. Owens, to me, is hard to figure right now. He came in as a very highly touted guy a year ago, but averaged under 4 yards a carry. That's not that's not super comforting when you look at it. The guys behind him, Amari Daniels, Lavian Moss, both averaged 5 yards a carry or more. Again, I don't know if that was situational garbage time. Those numbers can vary whether you're playing mop-up time against Tarleton State or playing crunch time against Alabama. So there's that. And in the receiving room, Muhammad didn't put up big numbers a year ago, but they brought in Cyrus Allen, who had 778 yards last year at Louisiana Tech, Jabre Barber, who had 999 yards, Jade Walker, returnee, doesn't get talked about a lot, had 590 yards a year ago. And then they got Donovan Green back, who was good as a freshman 2 years ago, had 233 yards worth of receiving over 4 starts. He didn't play last year. And, oh, by the way, they added Tre Watson from Fresno State, who was a pretty good tight end there, had almost 400 yards receiving, 4 scores. So I see a lot of pieces here, but I don't see a guaranteed superstar. And here's the other question. How much of this was just operating under the curse of Jimbo Fisher? Like, how many of these guys are ready to break out? And, yeah, they're better players than the numbers have shown because, I mean, everybody knows offense was an issue there, and that's one reason Jimbo Fisher got fired.
Right, and I like Moose Muhammad. I think he's going to be one of the main targets this year. Another guy, Cyrus Allen, I had doing some play-by-play last college football season. I had Louisiana Tech. I remember his name because I called him a lot. He was a go-to receiver there at La Tech, and so I think he'll fit in nicely at A&M with Connor Weigman throwing the ball, and you think of Jade Walker and these guys, Noah Thomas, who are back. They've played. They have reps. Like I think yes, there's not like 3 or 4 standout guys, but there's enough playmakers in there that's going to help Weigman out. And Moose Muhammad, I think, being the main target, but there's enough guys who can make plays to where they can spread the ball out. They can put other guys in. It's not going to be one or two guys that they throw through every time. I think it's going to be a collection of guys that catch balls for A&M this year, and it's going to have to be with the defenses that they'll be up against. They're going to have to spread this out some.
And by the way, one other thing, if something goes wrong with Connor Weigman, they've got two backups who played pretty well in spot duty. So there's also that. That's a nice little thing to have in your back pocket.
It really is. Jaylen Henderson right behind Weigman, and then Marcel Reed. Both have played. Both have gotten some time in the game. So, yeah, that absolutely helps. And when you have a injury-prone quarterback like Weigman, he's struggled with injury in the past. Hopefully he avoids that this year, but you always have to be ready, especially for the quarterback position, to have some good backups. And I think the quarterback room is fairly strong there in College Station.
All right, Chase, let's talk defense. Defense has not been the reason that A&M has not won games recently. Now, they do lose. It seemed like they had a bunch of really good defensive backs who've been there forever. They lost some of those guys. They get one of them back in Tyreek Chappell. They added three pretty significant pieces in the portal on the secondary side. They added three pieces at linebacker in the portal and added one huge piece in the portal at defensive end. I think this is a talented group. You do have we look up and down, we say, hey, the guys return. You don't have a lot of guys that were like all SEC dudes, but Torrin York played a lot of ball for them last year. I think started all the games. One of their leading tacklers. They've got a really nice combination of experience and landing some dudes in the portal who'd really produce other places.
I think one of the biggest strengths of this entire team is the defensive line. And I think it starts with edge rusher Nick Scorton, who has come to College Station by way of Purdue in the transfer portal. I think he is going to be a big piece to Texas A&M this year. But you look around the offensive line as well. Shamar Turner, the tackle coming back, he's played a lot of games. DJ Hicks has played in a lot of games. Shamar Stewart's played in a lot of football games. That's a very veteran defensive line. And they picked up Johnson from Wisconsin as well, who's on the depth chart. And he may see some time as well. But I really like the defensive line. I think this is a huge strength. One, just because the amount of football that they played, these are experienced guys you have up front. And it starts with Scourton. He's going to be huge. He's going to be huge for Texas A&M this year, and that was a huge pickup to get him to come down. He led the Big Ten in sacks with 10 last year. He had a great spring in the spring game, if you watch that. And you combine him with Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart, who also combined for, 7.5 sacks and 12 tackles for loss last year. Combine those three guys together, and that they're going to be dangerous. This is a great defensive front.
Yeah, and the back seven's going to look a lot different. Scooby Williams presumably will occupy one of the linebacker spots. Florida's defense wasn't exactly outstanding a year ago, so I guess you have to throw some blame around. I don't know how much that goes on him or Jaden Hill, their starting nickel, who they also got from Florida. But, I think secondary where they added some pieces. Will Lee, the third from Kansas State, really productive. Marcus Radcliffe from San Diego State started 11 times at safety. I had a pick. Lee had 2 picks a year ago. Des Ricks, a really highly regarded, I think a former 5-star at Alabama who didn't really much see the field there a year ago. And BJ Mays from UAB, who had a couple of picks and 10 pass defended. I feel like, I don't know who's going to pop there, but I feel like you really need depth at corner against these high-paced offenses, guys that have played a lot of ball, and I feel like they did a good job at getting that.
They did, and they knew they had to go to the portal to get that, and so they got some really quality guys. You mentioned Tyreek Chappell. I think that was huge to retain him, to keep him on the roster to play for Mike Elko. But, yeah, the guys they went and got, I think, are really good. Those are great pickups. They bring some experience to the secondary there. I tell you, one player I'm really looking forward to seeing this year for Texas A&M is safety Bryce Anderson. I think his experience is going to be very valuable for A&M this year. He had 55 tackles and 7 tackles for loss last year. I think he's going to be huge in that safety position. And again, his veteran experience will definitely help A&M this year. But I really like the pieces that they've gone out and gotten. Now, is it going to translate to the field? We'll just have to wait and see. But the guys they went out and got are very quality guys. And let's keep in mind, Mike Elko is a defensive mastermind. I mean, he was a great coordinator when he was at Texas A&M, and he was a great head coach when he was at Duke. But his scheming on defense is really good, and it throws a lot of offenses off. And so I'm excited to see what he can do with these pieces, being the defensive mind that he is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that opener against Notre Dame. I feel like that's going to give us a good gauge of how they are. Now, A&M schedule, look, you never get an easy SEC schedule, but they avoid Alabama, they avoid Georgia, avoid Tennessee, avoid Oklahoma. I mean, it feels like a lot of the top half of the league they don't get. And it feels like the road trips, Florida, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Auburn, all teams that we'd probably say are in the bottom 8 of the 16-team league. It feels like and I think we did the schedule maybe in a different video, but it feels like the schedule, again, not that it's ever easy, was rather favorable. And I'm looking here, and they're only really the computers have them an underdog to Notre Dame. I think the bookmakers have got them favored by a point or two, so they've flipped that. LSU is basically a toss-up game. That's in College Station, and then the trip to Texas. That's going to be the one at the end of the year. Actually, they host Texas. Excuse me. But I mean, this schedule is kind of interesting because if they take care of business, they got a shot to play Texas with a lot on the line at the end of the year.
Yeah, this is, again, to me, this is one of the most interesting teams in the SEC because, one, their roster, but two, the schedule. There are so many toss-up games. There are so many games that we're just going to have to really figure out what this team is about, really, before you start trying to predict these games. But, yeah, we'll learn a lot quickly with this Notre Dame matchup, and I know we'll be previewing that game very soon here on the channel. You can hear our thoughts on the A&M Notre Dame matchup. But, yeah, that's going to be huge that we'll learn very quickly where this team is at, what they're doing, and I think this should be an interesting season for A&M. I think it could be a good season in year one for Mike Elko. If they stay healthy and if all these pieces work well together, I think they will. I think they could be a surprise team in the SEC for sure. They're in College Station. They've been waiting on this. They've had a bad taste in their mouth the last couple of years. It's not gone how they wanted it to go. And I think now they have a chance to get back up to the prominent Texas A&M that they were several years ago.
Yeah, it feels like they're due a break too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going to media days in Nashville last year and seeing Jimbo Fisher speak and going, oh boy, this might not go well offensively, because he got a question about who's going to run the offense and then gave a 3-minute answer and that should have been about a 5-second answer. And perhaps not so coincidentally, we know how the season went. He is no longer coaching, but they also lost an inordinate amount of close games. I don't know if there's a Power 5 team over the last 2 or 3 years that lost more games that were a field goal or a touchdown. So, this is a school due to catch some breaks. The schedule was a little bit easier on him. Speaking of Harbinger games, that game that in Gainesville week 3 against the Florida team, I think is going to be a little better than maybe people think. That'll be their first road trip. That'll be interesting. So, yeah, I really we talk about teams, if you just followed a team for a season, just because you got a lot of interesting games. I think A&M would be in the top half of that list in the SEC, just in terms of storylines and games of interest and all kinds of stuff this year.
Yeah, and I think they're due for a break. Like I think this could be a good year. I think this could be the start of something good. Now, will they, be at the top of the SEC in year one under Mike Elko? Probably not. But this is a team, this is a roster, this is a coach that I think can get them back to where they want to go. So I like where A&M's at right now as they kind of rebuild this program back up.
Yeah, I think it's a better league if A&M gets to the heights that A&M has always thought it aspired to. You say the same thing about Texas too, and Texas got there last year. So I think that makes it interesting. And of course, now the dynamic of Texas and Texas A&M in the same league adds even more.
Yeah, and that'll be a fun rivalry there in the final week of the regular season. That is for sure.
Yeah, well, thanks to everybody for watching our channel. We cover SEC baseball, basketball, and football with equal enthusiasm. We literally cover every sport every week, every year. We got baseball shows in the off season every week. Same with basketball. So make us your home for Southeastern Conference sports. That's what we do. We're fanatical about it, and we try to give you information on analysis and not hot takes. So we hope you like our brand. If you do, subscribe, tell a friend, hit that like button. Those things help our analytics. And if you're interested in advertising, you can see where to contact at the bottom of the screen. Anyway, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 16, presented by BetOnline.